the sun is having seizures. It's having an existential crisis. And so when you get into that solar maximum, it's just building and building and building. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not everything. Really taking this next level in your soul development, it's loaded in our DNA that we wake up and we have the lucidity in the dream, that we're more aware than ever before. And I think part of nature's plan, back to this idea of the avataric state, there are people who are channeling higher worlds.
I'd like to welcome back to the show, returning champion, Bonnie Miklas.
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Yeah,
thank you for making the trek down to Next Level Soul Studios.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's a beautiful studio.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Our last conversation hit a chord. We're almost 1 million views at this point.
It's hard not to hit a chord. We had we had the eclipse going on. Mm-hmm. Man, I think everybody was just thirsty.
Everybody was thirsty.
Yeah.
But people really enjoyed our conversation. So I was like, well, you have to come back.
Yeah.
You have to come back.
Yeah.
So if you could tell everybody who has not seen the first episode what you do and how you do it.
Yes. So typically I'm referred to as an Akashic channel, psychic medium. I know that's like a mouthful. And I go into altered states, and it's pretty normal looking altered states, to receive information from the Akashic field on the behalf of an individual, and then in teaching in groups. So just trying to get us through this epoch. It's an intense one.
Right. And you also do kind of like almost humanity readings as well, like a future of humanity and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Ever since I was a little girl, just feeling, I wouldn't say more like specifics, but more of the temperature or the astronomy or how the magnetics of Earth is going to change. Yeah, that's always been on my radar.
And we were talking earlier, you've been doing this long enough that you remember when everyone thought you were a freak. As everybody in this space
did, yes.
Yeah, like everyone was like, oh my God, what do you do? And that goes for any psychic, not you specifically, but any psychic, any channel. 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, even just like 5 years ago, it was still very taboo and strange. Mm. And I moved and started in a small town when I set up my practice, and they had just run the last psychic
out of town.
Out of town, they took her to court for witchcraft.
They
did.
What year was this?
What year was this? I think this was about, oh my gosh, like a decade and a half or more. I don't know, but it was
early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay, but still
ran her out, and I was cautioned when I was coming in, wanting to open up my own office and practice. I wouldn't do that if I were you. We just had a problem with the last one, and I was just really confused. I've been in this world so long; it still takes me a minute to remember that this is an oddity to some people. Mm-hmm. So I just marched in and said, you can look right into my eyes, and if you really think I'm not attempting to connect to all that is love and light and God, then you can just tell me, or forever hold your silence about it. I have great feedback, but yeah, it's turned around
a lot. And you weren't run out of town.
I was not. I mean, I was just open doors.
Really?
I guess. I think I was called to that town at that time.
They needed it.
And I opened up. It was a tiny town, and there was no one to talk to about this stuff, right? There were the old books, the OGs, had all of Sylvia Browne's books. I went to go see her in North Hollywood, trying to figure this stuff out. But, I was kind of alone. And when I talked to my mentor, which was my therapist at the time, she said, Bonnie, you're going to have to start it because it just doesn't exist. And so that's what I did in that tiny town. And in a little back room, it was just me and 2 other people at the psychic meetup. And it was a paranormal guy and, a mom. And we had great conversations like here. And, as the months clicked on, we got up to 10 people, which was really big for us.
So like a group of all the weirdos.
The weirdos.
Nice.
And then by the time I let it go, we were up to a couple hundred strong and had to rent out the parks, conference centers.
Really? Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, in that kind of environment, because I'm thinking like Footloose, Kevin Bacon, from the 80s kind of town.
Yeah.
Maybe not John Lithgow as the preacher, because you would have been run out.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that there was such a shift just in that little microcosm of humanity where 10 years earlier they ran a psychic out of town.
For sure.
And then when you show up, then they're open to it. And I know that it could have been different perspectives, different ways of doing it. But, you know, if they run out of psychic, they're going to run out of, even if it's a different flavor. And there seems to be a lot more openness to what you were doing. What do you think happened?
I think that whether they knew it or not, I was some kind of bridge between the worlds. You know, if people say, who do you channel? Who do you connect to? Even though I'm a practicing Buddhist, I always just see the light of Christ or Christ consciousness or Jesus. So I think that Christian people or religious people are already attuned to that or seeking that. So I think that the energy of whatever I was channeling and bringing at the time, again, unbeknownst to them, I think they felt a resonance of truth. I think that they felt the intentionality. That's what I'm hoping. So they would come in kind of scared, come through the back door. I would have people come to the back door and just, you know, kind of like prohibition of psychics, you know, and get in there. And I would hold their hands and just open my heart and, you know, just call in God. And I know that they felt that. So I think it was the power of the energy that opened those doors. And before long, I was on the local front, you know, of the newspaper. So it was a miracle, and the timing. And of course, you had that shift coming into the early 2000s and then the 2012. You know, this is, you know, this great predicted shift for humanity. And I think all of us light workers are exactly in the geography and the area that we're meant to be.
And to do the kind of work you're doing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal to be placed in such a juxtaposition, actually, and to see what's possible. It's not like you're around your tribe or your people. You're, you know, you're trying to shine light at Walmart. I mean, it's complicated. It's like literally spiritual training. Yeah.
That's yeah. And it seems that we all, you know, are born in this time, and we're all we all asked to be here. This time period, because apparently this is the most exciting time to see this massive shift. It's not going to be a fun, particularly time, because as with all transformation, it does take obstacles and overcoming obstacles and things like that. But we apparently chose this time period to be here, to be born when we were born, and to mature at the point where we are needed to do the work that we're doing.
Spot on.
And it's very interesting. I too, with this show, I said I'm not a channel or anything like that. I'm not near-death experience, but because of the work I do, I'm in your camp. I mean, I've been thrown into your camp.
Yeah.
You know, I've been adopted.
Yes.
You know, into the weirdo camp purely because I talk to weirdos, apparently, and the most lovely weirdos. And I say that with all the love in the world.
Oh, I see it as such a compliment.
I mean, we're in Austin, and they have T-shirts at the airport that say "Keep Austin Weird." So I say that with all the love in the world.
Oh yeah, no, such a compliment.
But it's fascinating to see, even in my little microcosm of people, that when I started the show and it started to get bigger and bigger, I lost friends, and that's fine, because you lose people who just can't grab onto what's going on. I have other friends who are still with me, and they still can't grab onto it.
That's fair.
And they actually, you know, they're like, so Alex, what is this after? How do you prove that there's an afterlife? Tell me, because he's atheist. How do you prove there's an afterlife? I'm like, I can't prove it, but I've spoken to not only a lot of spiritual mystics and things like that, but we've also had neuroscientists from Harvard and you know, all these kind of doctors and, you know, credentialed official people, and they're like, it's BS. And I'm like, cool, how you doing? So
again, I think it's that liminal space. I think it's that space of, you know, we term it as faith, that miracles happen. I don't think that you can have the same contact in that concretized knowledge, or that, I'm sure, you know, even people who channel are still, I mean, it's a wide open space. They're like, I'm really not sure how far this can go or how far reaching it can be. But I think, you know, when you have people that really want to see the signs or the miracles, you know, my best advice to them is you're going to have to play in that liminal space.
We are in a time of great change, and humanity is awakening more and more every day. Mankind needs insights on what is happening to all of us. That is why I'm inviting you to Wisdom from Beyond, a 6-day virtual summit designed to awaken your soul. Experience over 9 hours of soul-expanding channeling sessions led by 6 of the world's most esteemed channelers. Connect with the divine, receive sacred insights, and transform your journey by asking questions directly to the channelers themselves. This is more than just a summit. It is your gateway to understanding the profound shifts happening within and around all of us. Plus, when you sign up, you receive exclusive bonus content to deepen your spiritual exploration. Join us and step into the extraordinary.
You're going to have to reach a little bit, have that poetic mind, because it's just not going to come in the form of hard science. Most likely, I don't think it is. I think it's going to draw you into two worlds at once.
But there is starting to.
Oh, for sure.
There's hints in science.
Yes.
There's a film that Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, they put his brain under I forgot what they called it, that cap that they put on to check his brain waves.
Yeah.
When he channeled, something happened.
Yeah.
And he was able to do things in the brain that you're actually not supposed to be able to do.
Absolutely.
Like there was one level that was like, human beings, when they hit this level in their brain, it never goes up. In age, it only goes down. So you basically top off at whatever that.
That's amazing.
And when he channels, he goes up. So that's not supposed to happen, and that's a sign. So there's something there.
Thank God for the something, or we'd still be back where we were.
Well, not even meditation was weird. It was weird as hell 20, 30 years ago.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
It's just meditation. What are you, a monk somewhere in a Himalayan cave or something like that? And now it's one of the most researched things ever. It's just the health benefits and what it does. So if we were wrong about that 20, 30 years ago, where do you think in 20, 30 years we're going to see about what you do, channeling or a psychic medium phenomenon, which, again, there's been a lot of research. The government had government programs around psychics.
They definitely did. I think as far as like our science in the looking at the shifts of our biology, absolutely that's going to progress. Will we ever be able to lay out and write a book on how the other side is formed? I don't know.
Not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime. But I think it's the grit and the grip and the obstructions that create that spiritual strength that allow us to kind of do what it takes to transcend this world. It's hard work. I mean, it's not a passive thing. When if you're a meditator out there, it takes grueling discipline sometimes to get into that sweet spot, And I'm finding, it's a really scary time for people to let go of their walls or their boundaries. So I don't know. I think we're going to make wild advancements. But in some ways, I think that mental health and the pressures that are on our nervous system, both environmental and in a social setting, I think those are going to intensify. So at the end of even this decade, I don't know how we can quantify, levels of advancement. But what I do know is we have to keep trying.
And there's no question that we are advancing. I mean, it's not pretty. But we are advancing. Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Akashic Records. Now, you and I both understand what the Akashic Records are, but can you explain to someone who just for the first time is listening to this what the Akashic Records are?
The Akashic Records, it's come so far now that it's in mainstream. I mean, people, when I would bring it up, 10, 15 years ago, I literally would hear people go, "You mean that cereal?" And I'm like, no, that's Kashi. That's not the same thing. So when you talk about
you're channeling cereal,
how we've advanced in even like the terminology that we're using. So the Akashic word and philosophy has been around for thousands of years. And really what it breaks down to is this ether system, this ether net or Indra's net that's all around us. And some people believe it's this, book far out in the cosmos, which it's not that, but that's not the only point of access. It's in every sentient place. It's on every level of consciousness. But I think when people are thinking about Akashic Records, what they're really after is the highest minded approach and perspective of their life and what they're here to do. So to me, it's just a living field of consciousness. And you, just like you're typing something into a search engine, depending on your intention, you can drive your consciousness, your receptivity, your experience, or knowledge or will anywhere you want to go. It literally is the etheric Google.
I was hearing it from, I've heard this from many near-death experiencers, that they're able to once they're on the other side to basically download the entire anything they want to know.
Yeah,
It's instant understanding
all of it
in a way that we can't quantify with words,
right?
Or the knowledge or the processing power of our own brains.
Yes,
it's at a different level. It's like, and I always use this terminology, it's like a floppy disk versus a quantum computer.
there you go.
It's two very different, I mean, they're both same information,
right?
but they're transferred at a completely different frequency and level that one can understand so much more and the other one's so limited. And you can't take that and jam it into
No,
this.
you can't. And I think one of the main aspects of the Akashic realm is that there's no time. So although it's widely known as this archive of past lives, and it is that, but it's also future lives. It's different timelines. It's the multiverse, really. So when you're tuning into an Akashic Records system, especially on a very high dimension of it, and you take time out, I mean, you're one with life as it ever has been, is, or ever will be. And so it has this return to light, return to our truth. And I think that is what people experience when they have a near death, just what you're describing, just this amazing return to truth. To God,
But this instant understanding of things is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Now you said something very interesting. You said past lives, future lives, and multiple parallel lives. Now this is where our brain starts to hurt because our parallel realities could go on infinitely.
Yeah, they can.
It's just in this one life. Every major decision can spawn off a new timeline.
Sure.
And we do it as humanity as well. We all choose that. There's a reality that JFK was not assassinated. There's a reality there was no Genghis Khan.
Yes.
These kind of realities, and they go off and they play themselves out. So I always say, it's like, what if I would have married Jenny? What if I would have married Bob in high school? Like, what would my life be? And we all have those.
Yes.
Like, what if I didn't break up with that guy who turned into a doctor and I see his family on Facebook and and now I'm jealous or something like that, right?
It's not enough time.
So how do we quantify the idea of not only know that our past lives are there, but our present lives are there and multiple realities of each of those lives, but then also our future lives as well? Because, and I understand, from my understanding, is there is no time.
Yeah.
And everything's happening all at once.
All at once.
And we're all different fractals of a higher oversoul, if you will, that's experiencing, and then we're a fractal of God. The soul is a fractal of God in general, or of source. And we're just experiencing all of this at the same time. And if something happens in a past life, quote unquote, or a future life, it ripples across time as far as lessons you have to learn, things like that. Does anything I just said make sense?
Well, no. Yes, all of it. It does and it doesn't, right? It starts to be where your mind goes, no, I've reached the
the end of the floppy disk.
I think it's in your approach to how you begin to even think to understand such a thing. And especially if you want to experience more of who you have been, are, or could be. And that's what it is. It's these kind of presence of the self and evolution of being, right? Whether you look at that individually or collectively, but you want to approach it from a non-binary state, meaning this is the good life that I chose and this was the bad life. You're experiencing one thing from a fractal of different places in observation, which is really, really interesting. And as far as like past lives go, I don't know if you've ever had deja vu, Alex.
Of course.
Yeah. And you're like, that's happened to me before, but with just a little bit of a different kind of experience. And I think it leads us back to understanding how powerful we are in what we think and what we do and the decisions that we make, even down to the little fleeting thought, creates a fractal or a shift in consciousness that just keeps going on for infinite layers. The way that I've found a way to surf this, though, is because we are having this experience where past lives and all of those memories and all of our future lives, they're kind of coming into the here and now. I don't know if you're feeling that, but you're kind of like all that you've been, or at least
there's a lot of stuff coming in.
A lot more.
Yeah. If you're sensitive to it.
Yeah.
If you're getting to that place of evolution in your own soul and your own frequencies going to a certain level, it definitely is. I mean, there's people that are completely don't feel anything because they're not there. And it's not part of their journey in this life.
Absolutely.
But there are, like I feel a tremendous amount of stuff happening being around people like yourself all the time, talking to people
sure,
around yourself all the time.
Sure.
There's that energy, there's these conversations, and now in studio, it's different than Zoom. So you really feel the energy difference, and I feel a lot of stuff going on.
I do, and I think that's definitely unanimous. Like, we feel the stuff, but what's going on? And it is going to take our sensitivities, our psychic abilities to be able to put it together, So I think the best thing we can do is look for themes. Mm-hmm. When I see my past lives, considering them past, I see a theme. I see where I can evolve. I see where I can open my heart. I see future lives, that carry me through where I am now. And so if you can start looking at yourself as almost like a trifecta, somebody that's here now, a version of yourself in the past, or somebody in the future, it's really helpful to see what theme or formula that you're working on, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I teach my clients this meditation, and it's just a musing of what will feel like your imagination, although I don't believe in imagination, because it definitely contrasts the laws of energy. Everything comes from somewhere, and all of it is relevant. It's just the power of interpretation. But I tell my clients, just close your eyes and begin to imagine or feel or sense a snapshot of who you've been in a past life. If you just were asked to do that, just go there in this moment and trust the first thing where your mind goes. Even if it's fantastical, even if it's hard to watch, just go to that place. And you can even inquire, go to the past lives where you've had the greatest talent and capacity. Just take a snapshot of that. And then to polarize that, go to the life where you held the most fear, pain, anger, hate, and just take a look at, almost if it was like a book, the bookends of your consciousness, and just tune in and experience. And, I love your analogy of, forget about the floppy drive. It's like this quantum download. That's the next step, to see and feel all that we've been and can be without judgment. And all of that is what? It's just information.
One thing that you mentioned, that you're a practicing Buddhist, which I find fascinating, because not only you're a practicing Buddhist, but you're also very open to Christ consciousness and every other modality out there, and more of like transcending beyond a specific kind of Buddhism is not a religion. I think it's more of a philosophy.
Of course. Yes.
But transcending those ideas, for people listening who are in a organized philosophy and or religion, what advice do you have for them on where they can believe, go to church, go to temple, whatever they do that helps them connect to God or source in their way that makes them happy, not hurting anybody else, but yet still be open? Because if they're watching this and listening to this, they're curious.
Yeah.
They're a little curious about what's going on. So like giving them the permission or how they can navigate these waters. Because I imagine if you're in a dogmatic environment and you've been programmed, but your heart and your soul is pulling you into like, what is this channeling? What are the Akashic records? What is a near-death experience that doesn't go along with the dogma? They feel guilty, they feel scared, they feel fearful. What advice do you have for them?
Absolutely. I think the advice I would give, what I've learned from Buddhism, actually, if I take it back even further than that, growing up in the deserts of Nevada, in strange lands, experiencing all kinds of level of mystery out there. And then coming into this world and considered, early on, my parents thought I was schizophrenic. I was institutionalized for a little while because of it. So it's been a very treacherous road. And from there, I was placed into a Christian cult. So I've had this appetizer platter of all of the extremes. I think that's part of my journey and my teaching. But it wasn't until I found Buddhism, I found a way to walk. So, it really is, they call it themselves the middle way, the middle path. And it absolutely is a philosophy that can be like a booster pack to whatever you're doing. And what I have found in these kind of polarized points of spirituality is that obviously in organized religion, the thing that we're really frustrated with there is that it's so shut down and it's so disempowering sometimes.
Walled off.
Yeah. It's walled off. Yeah, it's like in this box, and these are these rules, and you are participating on a certain level. Now, the part that they have right, that is a piece to our puzzle is the veneration. The ability to look beyond yourself into something that is bigger and omnipresent. And that is a very important piece. Now, if you walk all the way over to metaphysics, where I've spent most of my life, learning, reading all the books, teaching, experiencing, they're free. They don't have that walled off experience. They don't have that dogma or those same rules. They're taught you are God. You are the powers of the universe. And that's beautiful. But they're given the power, like that's the thing that's stripped away, I think, in some organized religious sects. But they then don't have the veneration or that parental process. Where do they go to lean? It's you can't hug a void. The universe is not going to feel supportive on your darkest day. It's just not. So and I think Buddhism helps you find deep compassion and love and connectivity, power and veneration all at the same time in that philosophy of love and compassion to self and the other. I think it's the keys to the universe for sure.
The one thing that I found interesting in your commentary there is that you had gone through so much trauma in regards to the institutionalized and the Christian cult. Very extreme.
Yeah.
Those are you're definitely on the extreme side of that spectrum. That Buddhism gave you structure, something to hang your hat on, something to grab.
It did.
Because the other structures that you were shown were not of service to you. And that was kind of like, oh, that makes sense to me, because that's why people go and become a part of a church, become part of a community, become part of a dogmatic religion, because they need structure. But unfortunately, sometimes with some organized religions, those structures come with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Where Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, like there's so many of these other modalities around the world that don't come with, they have their own baggage. All of them do. All of them do. But it's different. And if you can, and whatever works, and you gravitated to Buddhism, it could have been,
for sure,
it could have been Judaism, it could have been a bunch of different things that you could have grabbed onto. But it just gave people structure. So I think that that's the idea of the metaphysical side is very free. But that takes a specific kind of soul, a specific type of person who is willing to kind of go with the waves, where others really need, just tell me where to walk and I will walk that way.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll dabble over here, but I just need something to hold on to. I can't be a ship at sea. I need it tied down to something. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And I think when it comes down to Buddhist practice, there's nowhere to hide in it.
Right.
We're running up against some things that we call spiritual bypassing. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just a thing that happens when you're very excited in your spiritual path. And sometimes you'll skip steps, or we try to emulate what we see on YouTube, or we're just so excited by the path that we just want to be there already because we're not patient. We live in the West. But in Buddhism or Taoism or in Confucianism, you can't skip steps.
No,
it's a perfect process and program, and it accepts you as you come. And I understand that metaphysics and religions quote the same type of system, but there's something, for me at least, I can only speak through my experience, that when you've led lives of trauma or experience these unbelievable things that leave you just destroyed and pixelated as a human psyche. It is the one thing tried and true that brings you back to your core sense of being. And you can't bypass that. So you build a foundation strong enough to be able to go into the quantum hologram. Because I think if you try to do that before you're ready, it really shuts the door in your face, in my experience. So it's all about cultivating the container. Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
Now, I have a couple questions. Well, we'll have a handful of questions that I would like to ask the Akashic Records.
My best. Yeah.
So can you tell everybody what your process is really quickly? So,
with accessing
when accessing and channeling and stuff.
So, channeling is thank goodness that came out of the closet. Channeling is such a hot topic, and I love this topic. And I think it's helpful to investigate what channeling is now, because there are many different types of channeling. There's those that go completely unconscious and allow the energies to move through, which we love that.
Yeah. It's very theatrical.
It's very,
the voices change, like Sheila with Theo. When Theo comes in,
it commands your respect.
You may ask. I'm like, what is happening?
And
it's awesome. It's awesome.
We need it. We need those people to show us our capacity of becoming more than just a singular, mind. But then there's also conscious channeling, where it kind of flows in and out, or you're kind of aware of what you're saying. And there's this third type of channeling that my teachers, astral teachers, talk about, and they call it the avataric state. And you're constantly in a place of Q&A. It's seamless. It feels like it's just coffee talk, it's on all the time. It's on all the time because it's about broadcasting light, and it's about maintaining an energetic signal. It's beyond words. It's beyond the intellect. It's beyond, any kind of knowledge base that would resound on that level. It is about being a portal of light. And I'm in that third category. So sometimes people will be like, okay, Bonnie McCluss, whenever you're ready, go into channeling. And I get why, but it's always on. Now, I notice, so in answering this question about how we tap into the Akashic, database, it's about your state of consciousness. It's about how you are living in the mind, maybe not the brain, or living in the heart, not the critical thinking. So I love to tell people, if you take me to a cocktail party and you want me to be your bestie there, or your wingman, and we have to talk about normal stuff, it's like I lose that avataric connection and I can't form words. And I'm sitting over there like the biggest fuddy-duddy. You do not want to take me to a cocktail party. It will be embarrassing. So I think the interesting thing, because I think there are a lot of people waking up to what they call this avataric state, or these light bearers, you'll find it's hard to just be in everyday scenarios. It's hard to be around people that are not open-hearted. So this Akashic kind of bandwidth is always on and open. Yeah.
So you could just kind of come in and go out.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. They are clear what needs to be said at the time it needs to be said. And sometimes I'll hear, not yet, hold it.
Oh yeah, so, I've heard that too. You're not ready to handle that yet.
Yeah, they're like, nope, sorry.
Can you imagine if in 2015 someone said, hey, in 5 years there's going to be a worldwide pandemic, and the entire world's going to shut down for a few months.
Yeah.
Just trying to grasp around that.
I think you got to look at the bigger picture. And if everything creates a ripple in time and space, stuff really matters. I've been asked so much. So did you know that the pandemic was coming? About 11 days before it hit the Western continent, I did. And that's about it.
Yeah, there was talks of there will be an event. There will be something that shifts humanity. So that was talked about, but they couldn't say, it's going to be this or that.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, with the line of questioning that I will give you for the rest of the day, for the rest of our conversation, for sure. that they're going to be, especially when it comes to humanity, that they will be broad.
Yes.
But I've heard, depending on the channel, sometimes they're specific on dates, not like on March 20th or something like that, but like in 2025, this is expected to happen. Something will happen here, but by the time 2027 happens or 2030 happens, this will happen. And then 50 years from now, and this is the scope. It's very broad kind of runway, as opposed to January 15th, this is going to happen at 5:45.
Absolutely, because I think that, it's always a moving target. It's the law of energy. It's always going through transmute.
It's free will.
Yeah, absolutely, which are always changing the states of energy. Yeah.
All right, so my question is, I wanted to talk about this because this is something that a lot of people in my community have been reaching out to me about, and as this solar flares.
Yeah.
The solar flares, that this is going to be the big thing, that we're going to be knocked out, like power is going to be knocked out. It's going to be like a major event for humanity, very similar to what we went through in 2020, but not the same, obviously. I'd love to hear if there's a spiritual significance to these solar flares this year, next year, maybe for the rest of this decade, which I hear is going to be a fun decade.
Yeah.
You can hear the sarcasm. But what is the significance of these things?
I'm so grateful that we are ready to talk about this.
Good.
I've been wearing out my friends for a few years now, and they're like, solar flare, what? And I'm like, but it's so important. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not everything. Of course, we are in something that, by scientific standards, they regard as solar maximum, and that means we're heading towards a solar pole flip, which this happens about every 11 to 12 years.
A solar pole flip, so the poles are shifting in the sun.
Yes,
Interesting.
we're right in it. So we're at that climax. The most chaotic, the sun is having seizures. It's having an existential crisis. And so when you get into that solar maximum, it's just building and building and building. And, there's suggestions that it came in this summer and it might be going on until 2025. Nobody really knows, but it's building until those poles flip. It's like it's the crowning before the baby comes in. And again, this is a natural phenomenon that has happened on Earth as long as we can remember. However, it's happening now as Earth's magnetic field is very, 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 very thin and porous. We're moving into a whole different galactic seat and center. Our neighborhood is changing. The Mayans warned us about this. They said we're going to be moving from a solar center to a galactic center. In some of the theosophical movements, they believe that we should be focusing on the Hercules solar system, that there's a secondary sun that wants to come out and be in play. So who knows? But if we look at our sun, humans are bound to light. We are bound to light. It gives us information and code. Well, if our light source is going through a renewal, it's going through static, and I wouldn't call it confusion. I would just call it almost, to me, feels like a death and a rebirth. The last thing we want to do is be led by external forces right now, right? Mm-hmm. So if the sun is going through its crisis, and the sun is information, right? And it's spitting out all that it's ever known or could know, but it's coming out backwards and jumbled. And we are electrical, light-bound human beings. Well, if you try to set your standard or your center by anything outside of yourself, it's just a series of chaotic networks, if that makes any sense, So everybody else is feeling the sun going crazy. So at this point, the best thing I can tell people during the solar maximum and the pole flip, you have to go within. You have to find a different light source. Some people are using the crown, literally focusing on your interior light. So again, this is nothing to be scared of. This is the phenomenon of nature, but it is shifting us to a massive different way of how we receive information. Because I think, it's also a part of this preparation to receive energy and information from our neighboring galaxy in the Andromedan, system. So, we'll see.
So then what effect does it have on human consciousness and this great shift that we're going through right now?
The solar
Yes.
flares, I think really the first thing that's the biggest problem is our bodies. Mm-hmm. We're all kind of foggy right now, fatigue,
yes,
quick to get sick. It's really lowering our immune system, which is fine. Again, this is how people evolve on Earth. They assimilate to all these chaotic things in the environment.
It's been rough for me this year.
Has it been?
I've been sick 6 times, and I have children, but still, it's been a record year for me.
It is, and I think it is for everyone.
Hard. Not like a sniffle. They're
right.
like 6 days out, 5 days out, a week out, just out.
And if we're being honest, we're like, am I going to live through this one? Is this it? Is this the end?
As you get older, every time you're like, why am I not bouncing back as much as I used to? As my kids bounce back like a day later.
Oh my gosh. Really, the people that are making the most money right now on the planet are probably the energy drink providers and source creators of the monsters.
Very much.
But yeah, so I think the first thing, just to know, again, it's not something to be scared of. It's something to be reverent and mindful of, is how our bodies are having to take a knee and recondition how we process light and information. And so you don't want to be the ultimate multitasker and put as much on your plate as you possibly can. That is a dying paradigm.
It is.
Okay?
The hustle mentality.
The hustle mentality is going. It will put you in the hospital. It's a really, really intense, but nobody told us that, so we're having to figure it out in real time.
My first show was called Indie Film Hustle, so I get it.
Right.
Yeah, because in that field you got to hustle, you got to work, you got to do all this stuff. But as I've kind of transitioned into this space, looking at that time, the hustle. Yeah, you absolutely have to have a work ethic. And you absolutely have to do it, but there has to be a balance.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, you will burn out at any age.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Balance is key.
Balancing yourself is a key. And it's a lesson I'm still learning. It's a tough lesson.
Well, and I think it's for the higher good, right? Because
Right.
when we slow down, and this is kind of a counterintuitive thing to know, when you slow down, the slower you walk, the slower you speak, the slower you do anything in life, the higher you move in a vibrational state.
Correct.
Okay. And as you expand on a vibrational state, your awareness expands into your memories and to that Akashic field and capacity. And part and partial, I think that's why we're starting to have flashbacks of past lives or new talents that are coming onto the scene. So, the good thing is it's forcing us to slow down. It's also bringing up a lot of deep, strange emotional layers. Again, it's a purge. If we can create at light speed is where we're going. This is where evolution is taking us. Even the great philosopher and psychic Rudolf Steiner said that our creation organ would evolve into the larynx. Mm-hmm. So that's the spoken word in its almost instant manifestation. I think we're going through a purification.
Detox.
And a detox. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's as simple as that. So that's what our sun is doing. It's pushing us into what we're capable of doing. So I really don't see it as a negative thing. It's just hard.
No, let me ask you. You mentioned the pole shifts on the sun. Does the Akashic Records have anything to say in regards to the pole shifts on the Earth? Because that has also happened.
It is.
It has happened in the past. Many say that it could have been one of the things that had the Younger Dryas in combination with comets or something hitting for the big flood and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious. We're jumping into like ancient mysteries a little bit here. But when you said, I was like, I wonder if they have anything to say about, and please, everybody watching, the poles are not going to shift tomorrow. Don't worry. That's not going to happen, but it will be a slower process. But it's still even happening to this day.
It is. And I think nothing happens overnight, right?
Right.
So there's a crescendo. There's a movement. You're hearing a lot on the news about the Earth's core is slowing, and there are a lot of phenomenon that's happening. And the way that I understand it from my astral teachers and guides is that it's creating a very thin veil. Okay, so there's not these hard walls between levels of consciousness or between here on Earth or the other side. You're seeing things out of the corner of your eye. Your ears are ringing. There's all these tones. We're now experiencing multitude of layers of consciousness and dimensions all at once. And so when we talk about the poles and their preparation to flip, or the solar poles flipping, or the Earth, coming to a slow rotation, I am told this is what happened in the Egyptian dynasty, and this is preparing you to have contact with guides, to have contact with higher beings, or your soul or your higher self in an everyday, readily way. It's giving you kind of the keys to the spiritual kingdom. So again, this is a good thing, but it's creating that very porous field. The other thing I think is something to note here is that as all of these cosmic energy and radiation comes into Earth, it's going to affect Earth's chemistry in ways that we don't understand yet. It's mixing with the period, with our chemical table. You have half-life of different chemicals kind of reinstating themselves, I think. I mean, there's this kind of ionized plume happening in Earth. Some people call it greenhouse gas. That's fine. Again, nothing to run and, bury your head under a pillow. You got this, or you wouldn't be here at this time. Mm-hmm. But a lot of interesting shifts on Earth to take the focus away from extreme physicality and move into the journey of the spirit and the soul.
So from the third dimension to the fifth dimension.
It's exactly what's happening. And it's going to be a slow process.
And from what I've heard from other mystics who've been on the show is that there are, not to put the tinfoil hat on, and I hate to put the tinfoil hat on, but just on a logical standpoint in a conversation, is there is life outside of Earth. It's not logical to believe there isn't.
Right.
There's literally billions of Earth-like planets, let alone just planets around the universe, even in our own galaxy, which is a small one apparently, comparatively to other galaxies that we can see. So the concept of there being life on other planets is absolute, in my opinion. Now, from other mystics who I've spoken to, they've said that there are beings who are more evolved on the consciousness level. And near-death experiencers have told me this as well, where they're able to see other realms or other planets. Because on the other side, you're like, I'd like to see a more advanced civilization than us. You're there. Yeah. I'd like to see a less, and then boom, back to the caveman kind of environment. But the more evolved one, they said that there are civilizations that are hybrids of us, meaning that when I'm not physically hybrid, but spiritually hybrid.
Yes.
Where we're able to live in the material, but not nearly as dense as us.
Yes.
This is a very dense part of the ocean.
Yeah.
Higher up, but then also completely able to see guides and other things on the other side and incorporate that in daily life, which I know for us is very difficult to understand. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does. And I think if you think about how we're connected to Earth, Earth is going through her own ascension process, right? So we're all in this together. We're becoming less dense. And if not to bring biblical ideas into it, but I find it's really interesting if you get into end times, although I do not see this as any kind of rapture, I see this as a renewal. They talk about how the veil is going to be very thin, how you will be able to experience avatars or saints or angels or loved ones more than ever before. And I think it's because the whole planetary system is moving into a whole other density and capacity. So we're all going whether we like it or not.
I have to say, when you said the rapture, you know the origins of the rapture, right? Mm-hmm. The 1800s, the publisher.
Mm-hmm. I do.
It's just a publisher who's like, I need some more Bibles.
I do. I think I also
it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, but I also believe that things are leaked into consciousness in weird places through different people.
Right.
So like you'd be like, that was completely just bust and debunked. And you're like, you can see how that's true. But there are certain aspects that come through every different religion or society. And you're like, there's something to that. So I think it's meant to capture everybody where they are, no matter what sector or place.
There's a purpose for all of it. Yeah. There's a purpose that information came in, because I always say that if the reason we're at a place where this technology that we have now, I mean, there's literally 150 years that we've exploded in technology and consciousness, to be honest with you. I mean, in my lifetime, I think women could only vote like within the 50s, I think, or 40s, or I forgot when they actually got the vote, or maybe it was the 60s. I don't even remember. But that's not that long ago. Slavery was a thing over 100 years ago still.
Absolutely.
In America. So we have evolved a lot. And I always say, it's like, there's a reason why Alexander the Great didn't have machine guns.
Well, if you go all the way back and talk to our ancestors, especially, love looking at what the Mayans had to say about all of this, because they were so savvy in astronomy. Mm-hmm. And when we got to the end of the long calendar, 2012, they definitely coined a couple of years after. I mean, it's not one and done at 2012. They talked about way into even our timeline and a little bit going into the future, that we are moving from a solar center to a cosmic center. What could that possibly mean? Mm-hmm. My guides tell me we're going to be able to interact with information, technology, science, philosophy, art that we've never had any contact with before. And it kind of explains back, like what you're saying, 150 years ago, it's nothing. I think, somebody told me recently, I don't know how true it is, but it kind of rings true, that even 100 years ago, we take in more information in 24 hours than a person did their entire life. And so this massive shift, the brain can't take in. For the typical human, all Bashar and aside, the brain cannot take in the frequencies, literally the electric pulsings that's hitting Earth anymore the way that it interpreted and worked through knowledge before. We have to take it in as an energetic body. So I think that's the sign of our times. When the Mayans said we're going to this kind of cosmic center, I think it's going to be a flood of new information,
which can be overwhelming,
is a good thing.
But it could be very overwhelming.
I definitely think we're in that overwhelming state.
Well, isn't it similar to when you're channeling? When you're channeling an entity that comes in, your nervous system has to be primed. If it's not primed, you could blow a circuit. Totally. I'm assuming this is
same thing.
And I feel there's a lot of circuits being blown right now because the world is a little wacky right now.
It is. I think this might be helpful maybe to your viewers. Yeah. When I first started channeling, it's not like they make an announcement. You just go through a lot of different strange biological shifts. And I think that's why people are here as channels to help the masses grow through these shifts. But when I first started channeling, before I would go into a reading, I would have crazy amounts of anxiety. And my ego, my personality, my mind, my brain would say, oh, you shouldn't do this. You can't do this. You shouldn't do, I'd get all these neurological messages. Stop, there's a fire. Don't do this. All this anxiety. And then I would move into the channeling for the individual, and it would literally be this bliss, this connectivity to the highest source. It made sense. It was simple. It was fluid. It was perfect. And then eventually, we had to part ways, and my client would leave, and I would disconnect from that omni state, and I would just be this singular person, and I would move into a strange depression. What's the point of dishes and laundry, and why am I even here? Just kind of resentful. Why can't I be there, home and connected? And so this went on for years. This kind of odd anxiety formula prior to connecting and channeling, and then coming out into a depression. And now there are waves in this way that I channel, but now I notice these little quivers, these little moments of electrical anomalies, before I'm in extreme connection, or before I'm helping somebody on their path. And then when they leave, I feel a little homesick and a little sad. So I think, that's a small individualized experience, but I think it could really be relevant to what people are feeling as we're going into this phase change of Earth, the amplification of anxiety before they go into this kind of high oscillating, vibrations around them, or this kind of returning home and feeling what's been missing, their whole life. You think that would be beautiful, but sometimes it's grief that sets in, or a longing, or a depression. So I think those are things and topics we need to talk more about, that emotional roller coaster that we're
So
on.
what advice do you have for people who are being affected by these shifts in energy, by the solar flares and other elements that are happening on the Earth? There is some stuff going on, and there is like we were talking early on.
Yeah.
We can feel it. There's something happening in our bodies. Our immune systems are being dropped. There's things that are affecting us, but specifically from the solar flares, what we can do to deal emotionally with these effects.
For sure, yeah. So I think in Buddhism, they have this statement, this aphorism or creed, and they say non-attachment, non-aversion. Mm-hmm. And it means, don't get hung up and attached to any one moment or particle of an emotion. Try not to adhere to it. Try not to build stories in your mind, because, it's something that could potentially come in and leave within seconds. But what happens is we grab it and we perpetuate it, and it gets harder and harder to get out of it. So the first thing that I would suggest is try not to judge yourself. There's that compassion, or adhere to anything that's going on too tightly or too deeply. The other thing that we need to know is if it's in your path, it's yours. There are no accidents. All of nature is interconnected and divine and perfect. And the moment that you're having is literally the moment that your soul is queued up for you. And so to try to avert from that or skip out, it's fine. You can. It'll come back tomorrow, though. So in this state of allowance and allowing what's going to happen is a lifestyle shift. We don't walk around just going, it's fine. You took my parking spot and cut me off on the interstate. It's fine. You do you. So I think it's the state of mind and this cultivation of lightness of heart. Literally, the path will be lightheartedness, this compassion first, always for yourself. This is hard stuff. If you're here right now, you are a warrior. Even your ex that you cannot stand, also a spiritual warrior, just for being on earth right now. So slowing down, non-attachment, non-aversion, and really taking this next level in your soul development and trying to go within through your version of meditation every single day for survival purposes.
So moving on to the future of humanity, just a slight topic. 2024 has been a pretty crazy year so far, as every year in this decade has been since the pandemic.
Yeah. We'll be having the same conversation in a few years.
We came in hot.
Yeah,
we came in hot, no question.
Yeah.
This is also a political year, which is a whole other level of stuff, which we'll get to in a little bit. But is there any events happening this year that the Akashic Records can kind of share with us that is going to help us in our evolution in humanity's consciousness?
Absolutely. This year represents the purge or the detox. So, this anything that's not really in your highest good or alignment to your truth is going to present itself to you in very creative ways through maybe relationships, through job exchanges, And again, keeping in mind, we don't want to run away from things that are hard. We just want to be present and, remember that if it's there, it's ours, it's in our path. So I think this year is going to be the continuation of the purge. We've also cultivated a lot of energy. If we look at what Earth's comprised of and we bring in the elements, often referred to as the tetrapolar magnetic state, all of these elements are looking to align and to harmonize with one another. Do you think about Earth, we've had the water where it was a bit of a theme overthrowing everything else, or we have the climate issue. We have all of the heat. I think that's going to only intensify more and more and more as fire comes on stage. So I think we definitely have an elemental harmonization looking to happen. But for the rest of 2024, we're going to have to hold the momentum that we created, whether it be momentum we've created with knowing that we're not in the right job and we're going to start a new journey, whether it's the momentum from the political debate and race. We're going to have all of that momentum, and then everything's going to seem to be quiet and at a standstill.
Really?
Yeah.
When is that happening?
I think when we get into 2025, it'll be a lull.
Really?
It depends on the perceiver. It depends on your perspective.
But
generally speaking, you're going to have all of this amassed energy and shift and readiness for the consciousness shift. And I think there's going to be an eye of the needle, a little bit of a lull. And I think depending on the perceiver and how you look at that, it's time to prepare, reorganize, and align. Or it could be spooky because we have historically built worlds and cities and societies on chaos. So we're learning to build from a whole different energy resource other than chaos. So it's that time to choose if we're going to be driven by light and purified intent. And purified intent meaning getting into your heart and really knowing your piece of the puzzle piece and how you can serve humanity as a greater whole. It's all about service. So I think it'll be a little bit of a lull after everything comes to a head this year.
So is that going to be kind of like the eye of the storm?
I think you can call it the eye of the storm.
That
usually has,
Because there's been a storm.
Then
I lived in Florida, so I went through a few eye of the storms, hurricanes, and there's that moment in the storm where it's literally sunny. Like you're in the middle of a hurricane.
It's powerful.
But it's sunny and you don't see anything else around you and you feel, it's all over. I'm done. But the second part of the storm is coming right behind it. So is the 2025 the eye where there's going to be more coming? I think
you could look at it that way for sure. I think that you're having momentum. So, we all work with this period of momentum and inertia, okay? And if you look at quantum science, we get into a lot of how the ways that energy works, on even down to the smallest particles, on a neutrino level. But we're dealing with momentum and inertia. And when those create some kind of equality and critical mass on each polar side of that, it almost births a new reality. So when we get into this new eye of the needle, it's going to be, I love Greg Braden's work around the Isaiah effect. I think that this is really the quintessence of vertical time. I think this is the time where we could do a lot of work to shift the consciousness of Earth. So it's a preparation more than you better stock your cabinets, the storm is coming. So I don't want to present it as that.
More toilet paper.
It's what do we stand for? And how are we going to be of service? And what talent do you have to contribute to the greater whole? So it really, truly can be the birth of a new Earth, and that's right around the corner. I also predict that there will be a shift in consumerism. There'll be a shift in focus on what people care about, even down to like the big corporations. I think you're going to see a philanthropy war. And I think the big head companies are going to try to pull people in by good deeds.
Even though the intentions are not honorable, but the work is still there.
The work is still there. I don't know what company, but you'll get maybe like Amazon. Like we're going to clean up the ocean. So and this is not necessarily going to begin directly in 2025, but you're going to see that shift of it's a quantum shift, really. It's a consciousness shift. And even though we know what they're doing, it means that the people care about things that are deeper, more advanced, and expansive. And these companies are going to catch wind of that. But win-win, they're going to have to put their money
where their mouth is. Well, that's something that's happened to us over the last 30 years or so.
Beginning. Yeah.
Where we demanded organic foods.
The people will demand.
We demanded organic foods. We want cleaner foods. We want cleaner buildings, and we don't have asbestos here anymore but back then it was
absolutely.
But now we're like, no, that's not acceptable. Moving forward, we need to do this. So this has been going on.
It's just gonna. Well, if you think about, we are the earth, and the earth is us, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like an external reaction. I'm sorry, it's an external reflection of who we are. Well, if the Earth's iosphere and energy fields are becoming very porous, if the veil is becoming very thin, what that means to an individual human experience is transparency. Mm-hmm. Things will be able to be crystal clear and seen. And, we better, I think from a corporation stance, they better get their ducks in a row.
And let me ask you, in regards to the corporations, that's one of the areas I wanted to talk about with you today is these establishments, mm-hmm. Things that have been there forever. There are companies who've been around for 100 years, or companies like, I'll use Amazon. We're not picking on Amazon, but Amazon's a juggernaut. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. Sure. Apple and these other kind of giant, Google, these giant companies. There seems to be a shift happening in corporations. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the other sectors in a minute, but specifically in corporations where what was once allowed is not being allowed anymore by people. People are like, no, we're not going to buy what you're selling.
Yes.
There needs to be a shift. I think that's what you're kind of talking about. But there's also going to be the old, like Sears. Sears went down. Like Sears been around for like they what? Yeah, right. Sears is gone.
I know.
And then you and I are both been around the planet long enough.
Yes.
That there has been that there's been companies that just like, Blockbuster. I always like picking on Blockbuster. But when you and I were coming up, that was a juggernaut. It was an absolute juggernaut.
Absolutely.
And there's so many of these companies that were huge and they're just falling. And this new kind or new evolution of a corporation are starting to come up.
Yes.
Some still with the old systems like an Amazon, let's say, or a Walmart. But yet there's going to be other ones that are going to overtake those guys eventually.
100%. Absolutely.
In a more conscious way.
In a more conscious way. And if you think about us going through the Great Awakening, mm-hmm. just because we're spiritual doesn't mean we're the only ones going through the Great Awakening. It's happening to everybody. It's the compression. It's loaded in our DNA that we wake up and we have the lucidity in the dream, that we're more aware than ever before. And I think part of nature's plan, back to this idea of the avataric state, there are people who are channeling higher worlds that work at Amazon, that work in governments and political. I know this sounds a little naive and high-minded, but, a great example is 10, 15 years ago, my astral teacher said, you need to get into film. You need to be, you need to be with the masses and talk and be seen. And so I did that and I tried, and nothing seemed to work. I tried and tried and tried. And I would come home going, well, I'm trying to do what I feel I'm being led to do. And at the end of a lot of frustration and deep meditation, I heard, you have to wait for them. They're not ready. And, wait, Bonnie, wait. And now it's literally the first season of my life where people are ready to bear this kind of light and information. So if you look at even Hollywood, in the recent years with some of the movements, the Me Too movement, all of that's being purified and becoming transparent. So even the creators of film and content and exactly what you do, it's coming on now. These are the voices of reason, transparency, truth, and light. Yeah.
Well, since you brought Hollywood up, that was one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about.
Great.
I come from Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the business for at this point almost 30 years. And I've seen it change dramatically. From when I was coming up in the 90s, I saw a lot, and having my other podcasts in this space where I got to talk to the biggest people in the space about, and on air and off, about what was going on.
Right.
The Me Too movement was a very big one, obviously. But that was a joke back in the day. You know, the casting couch was a punchline in movies.
That's a good point.
It was literally, everyone heard of the casting couch because it was part of,
that's right.
It was just like, oh yeah, you want that part, you got to go to the casting couch. Like that was, and it's like you just like, now, but go back to these movies. It was literally a punchline, you know, and Hollywood Accounting is a punchline now. Like, you know, oh yeah, you'll never make money in the movies because they have something called Hollywood Accounting that will steal all your money and they'll do it legally. All this kind of stuff. But all these kind of things are starting to come up. They're all bubbling up and changing. The shift that's happened in media, in mainstream media, has been massive. Hollywood I feel it's eating itself. And imploding on itself. You could see it in the kind of content they're putting out, and that just the money's not there in the way that it was even 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It's just not there. And then let's not even talk about mainstream news, they're all suffering. While shows like mine and other shows of independent media are starting to rise. You know, I mean, this show gets, like, our episode, that's higher ratings than most CNN shows. You know what I mean? It's like, seriously. So, and we don't have, as you've been here at the studio, the same kind of overhead that CNN has. So where do you see Hollywood, and I use Hollywood as a general term for mainstream media,
of course.
But Hollywood and television and news, all that, where is this going? Because I personally, from my perspective, it's going to come down, it's going to crash, and then something will come up out of it. That's my opinion.
And definitely, that's what I see happening. And again, if you look at even corporation or Hollywood or anything like that, it's consumer driven.
Yes.
You know, that's what appealed to people, and that's why the creation was made and set out that way. So I think as people are changing, you know, they're becoming very sensitive. Everybody's a living empath right now. We feel so much. And even movies that are fast paced and, you know, all the lights and the sound, and it may appeal to some, but I think more and more and more, it's going to be too much for the nervous system to handle. So I think, you know, money always finds, you know, its arc. You know, they're going to figure out what people need. And so I think it's going to be conscious creators like yourself. I think if you love movies, then you know the reason you love it is because you're putting yourself in a story, on a journey, in an emotional journey. The music is key, the actings, you can feel where those characters have been or where they're going. Well, now if Hollywood doesn't change, we're not going to be able to recognize it as something in our own lives. So I absolutely feel like it's going to make a massive shift too. Again, is it doing it out of the kindness of its heart? Probably not. But it follows the consumers, and we as the people are definitely waking up.
Right.
In general.
And that's the thing that people are like, well, you know, if Hollywood becomes more conscious, you know, I could see Warner Brothers trying to put on, you know, conscious media or conscious shows or movies. And I'm going, it's not coming from a good place. Right. The consciousness, because that's a thing that you can't fake. You might be able to put it out there. Like philanthropy, you could fake that. You could fake. No, you can. As a corporation, you could just dump a ton of money in it, hire some really good-hearted people, and let them run that, and it gives you a good impression, a good image as a company.
Absolutely.
But with conscious media, you really need to have conscious people creating that media, because we'll feel it.
I was just going to say that I think it's going to be an arc, because how do you explain the science of that to media?
To a corporation, to a board at Warner Brothers.
They're going to have to just go through it themselves. But you're spot on. I think that people are so energetically intelligent now. Oh. You know, the feedback I get when the beautiful patrons and people I work with, you know, if they say, you know, when they go back and tell their friends, you know, what did you talk about with Bonnie? They're like, I don't know. But it was so authentic, and I feel better, you know, and it's such a compliment, because really it's not about the words. It's about the consciousness, the depth, the intentionality, and the purified intention of what you're looking to achieve. And so you're spot on. I think that still has a long way to come, but I think the attempt will be there, and we have to start somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when the Last Temptation of Christ, not the Last Temptation of Christ, Is that the one? Yeah, is the one the Mel Gibson movie?
Oh yeah,
no,
I know.
Passion of the Christ.
Passion of Christ.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
not the last.
Yeah.
The Passion of the Christ. When that came out, it was monstrous hit. And I'm not judging the movie or anything, just the concept of what happened.
For sure.
And then all of a sudden, you started seeing Hollywood go, maybe we should make some biblical movies. Maybe we should make some faith-based movies.
Yeah.
That's an audience that we could tap into. And they wholeheartedly didn't buy it. I mean, yeah, you might got a one or two snuck in, but they didn't buy it. And then there's a show like The Chosen, who I know the creators of The Chosen, and they told me what they've done. Regardless if you believe in that path of Jesus or not, regardless what they have done in a media standpoint outside of the Hollywood system, making hundreds of millions as a nonprofit to tell the story of Christ and get that out there, regardless of how it's being told, is pretty impressive and unheard of. That a studio would never in a billion years put their money behind something like that.
Well, I think this brings in this concept that we're all going to have to educate ourselves about, and these are the laws of nature. And the laws of nature are really going to be our game plan. And when you look at people creating content or their intentionality, it's this sacred law of compensation or reciprocity. I mean, they really are doing it for the higher good. I mean, I'm not saying this from a naive standpoint, but they're, to the best of their ability, they're channeling and interpreting truth. So, it's really interesting to see where this is going to turn out, because you have sleeper cells in every single industry. You have this concept called the imaginal cells. And we know it, it's a pseudo term, but it happens in caterpillars. Caterpillar goes into the chrysalis and its DNA literally liquefies and turns to goop. And that moment just before death, it's so interesting, your focus is on, out of body or, near death experience, because that moment in that liminal space, as I was speaking about earlier, is the moment that kickstarts the latent DNA for the next journey of someone's soul and purpose. So you have these sleeper cells in Hollywood, in Amazon, in all these big corporations that may have been doing it for whatever reason, or they've been taught to grow and thrive and to, walk through the industry in a certain way. And all of a sudden they wake up and there's a whole different version of themselves in play. Yeah. So I think you're going to have a lot of internal oddities happening on from corporate to Hollywood to families to friend groups, because we're not waking up at the same time or in the same way. Yeah. So it's going to be bombastically beautiful as it happens, but it's hard to really quantify because we don't know where those sleeper cells are or the avatars. The avatars, truly, I'm told, are calibrated to channel the gods or the ascended masters. And so we just don't know where they're all placed yet. But we're about to find out.
There seems to be a lot of good and bad turmoil happening. Yeah. Because you need it, though, all the stuff is coming up. Yeah. It needs to see the light.
Yes.
It needs to see the light, and it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
In one way, shape, or form. And
critical mass.
And it's moving at a lightning speed. I mean, and I use AI as a reference. I mean, a couple years ago, that wasn't a term in the zeitgeist. It's been around forever, the concept. But now it's an integral part of our life. It's just, I woke up and what? It's everywhere now. It's part of businesses now. Like if you take AI out of a business, the business shuts down.
Yes.
That's how integral it's, and it's going to become more and more and more integral. But it's so fast. It's moving so fast. Why are things speeding up so much in all aspects of our existence right now? The advancements, spiritually, technologically,
my goodness,
politically, money, everything seems to be kind of like speeding up. These last 5 years have been insane.
I think we're experiencing, on a lucid level, on a philosophical level, on a scientific level, we're looking at our own evolution under a microscope. I think as we are being introduced to the cosmic center, maybe over a solar center, or some of these other radionic aspects that are coming in, we're having to absorb. I mean, it's coming through our nervous system. Our brain's trying to understand that which it's perceiving. We're becoming we're looking up to these, higher spiritual concepts, that we're really destined for. But it's going to take us moving beyond cognition. So in some ways, I think it's a push to move into the high-speed virtue of ourselves. And that goes back to the heart, heart-based living, and then the mind. When it comes to AI, it's to some people, it's a really scary concept, but I think, it's going to swing and create this polarized momentum, just like everything else is. I think it's going to advance us and really call us into, living and experiencing world at unprecedented, light speed, literally. And in doing that, we have to slow down. But with AI, I think it's going to get also to a point where we maybe crave the organic nature of the human consciousness or creation. I think it too can be a catalyst to bring us back to center, strangely enough. So non-attachment, non-aversion, I guess.
Going back
to all the things, walk the middle way. Yeah. Nature's intelligent and there are no accidents.
Very true. Yeah. Very true. Now, turning back to politics for a second, which is always fun. What is the deeper spiritual purpose behind the turmoil that we're going through and have been going through in politics, not only here in the West, but around the world? It's a very pivotal year. Over 50% of the countries in the world are having some sort of elections. So there seems to be something in the zeitgeist. But what's the deeper spiritual purpose of this for us?
I think it's teaching us, just like it has in every epoch or spiritual or any society, ancient societies, it reaches this point of, centered on the ego or centered on, the lower minded principles of greed or money or, just this rat race that we're all in. And it gets to that point of critical mass. And in nature, things have to go through that cycle. I mean, it's the detox, it's the purge. And again, I think it's really hard if people are really choosing to get into this and to eat, sleep, and drink the news and Fox News or the political race. And I'm not saying put your head in the sand either, but it really is a part of this 2024 detox as things get to this place of critical mass and energy. So like I said before, what it is doing that's a good thing is it's drawing up this emotionality, this quest to know more, to be more, to have more. It's returning power back to the individual in some ways. We're not sleeping at the wheel where it got a little comfortable there for a while. It can be likened to the religious model, where it was an expectation. Churches weren't really under the scrutiny that they're under now. It was just your grandparents did it, so you do it. It wasn't really picked apart and looked at deeply. Well, politics it's going through the same thing. People are becoming awakened and intelligent, and there's a lot of heat on this. Again, if you look at the bigger cast of characters in our galaxy, it's pushing us to the point of renewal. And everybody's made their journey through the birth canal. And it was probably one of the worst days ever in a lifetime, trying to make it from the other side into the physical form. I mean, it's a really treacherous road. So, when people ask me about politics, my honest answer is it's necessary to purify itself this way. It's just necessary. So, And
well, how about where does the global leadership play in the part of our spiritual evolution over the next decade? Because are we going to have more conscious, I can't even say I'm saying this out loud, conscious political leaders around the world that are going to start to help evolve us in a bigger way?
That's what I'm being shown. Again,
Really?
Back to those sleeper cells. You don't know where they are.
I need the dates. I need the dates.
There's no time, Alex. It's already happened. It's a matter of your own perception. But, I think, you don't know who's positioned where. I mean, there's a lot. Nature's highly intelligent, like I said. And, perhaps this gets back to the whole metaphor found in the Bible of the 144,000 sitting at their post to awaken at this time. So I think we're going to have some great leadership. But I think more than that, we're moving from a hierarchy of leaders and followers to something called circle consciousness.
What's that?
Where we're all on the same level and we recognize, like they did, our indigenous ancestors knew. You know, you had a piece to the pie, you had a gift, and you had some karma to work through, and you just did you. You know, you had a piece to the tribe that was vital. It wasn't necessarily better or worse. It was a vital piece to the whole. So when you get into circle consciousness, your piece is every bit as important as the president of any country. You know, we're all looking at each other on the same stage of life. And if you can move from that hierarchical thinking, you can move into really what we need. From my astral teachers talk about non-binary states of mind. And this non-judgment is where it's going to be an easier way of evolution if we're not constantly going up and down. So yeah, I guess it comes down to your perspective, but the cat's out of the bag for sure. Yeah.
Very good.
We're not going back in. We feel too much now. Yeah.
So shifting over to the economy is another area that a lot of people are very concerned about. You know, we've been going through a lot of inflation here in the States and I think around the world. And things are a little bit shifty. Where do you see, or how are the global economic systems going to reflect the shift in human consciousness?
The big push on earth is to go within. Even Yogananda talked about that. He said the second coming of Christ will be inside. You know, it's the self-realization, and this is the greatest push. So if that's true, I think part of what we're going to go through, even on a consumer level, is, can I make it myself? Can I grow it myself? Can I barter? You know, this might take a couple years to really get into this, but if the power is coming back to people and to consciousness, we're looking at the talents that we possess and how to work as a society and as a tribe. And so more and more people are going to go, you know, maybe I don't need to be owned by the companies or in the corporation. Again, hard to believe at this juncture in time and space, but I think people are going to empower themselves to create from their living room. To broadcast from their garage. Yeah.
What we're doing right here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm currently involved in every pottery class known to man. I mean, maybe the next creator of your dinnerware, who knows? But I think that the power will be returned to our gifts and our talents, and we'll be able to share amongst each other. So this will be a verb in the world. To move power into a place that it hasn't been for hundreds of years. And again, the consumers are the voice. We are the voice. We are the shifters of consciousness. And so that's why we're here. That's the whole purpose of our incarnation, to see if we can return back to our center.
And how about the monetary system that has, in many ways, is not serving us anymore.
Right.
It really isn't. You know, the inflation where, you know, you could put $100 away, and if you don't do anything with it, it'll be worth 60
Absolutely.
In the next 10 years or 15 years. You're losing value in money and things like that. So where do you see the monetary systems?
It's going
moving?
to continue to be a complication, right? It's going to, but again, it's what it echoes in our psyche and in our spirit that matters. So I think there will be people who empower themselves to create, to be creative, to find new ways to live and thrive and to be a part of a community. I think it'll drive communities together. Maybe out of necessity at first, just like the corporations. Maybe their media campaign is do good out of necessity, but it'll, you know, so it'll have that level of it. The other level I think it may bring up in people is fear of lack and destitution. You know, if you can't afford to go replace something, you know, some people, their first feeling is to go into panic and anger. But that can only last so long because it's not your truth, you know? So again, I think that the oddities of the monetary systems and systems at large won't work anymore because of the stressing aspects of Earth and what's happening to us psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. Yeah.
And it's funny when you're saying that, you know, out of necessity, corporations are going to have to do things differently. I saw an ad the other day for Disney Plus, Hulu, which they own now, and HBO or Max.
Right.
In the same package.
There we go. Yeah.
And I'm like, what is, I mean, that's how desperate they're getting. They're like, listen, man, your system's not doing that great. Ours isn't. I think together, I think if we work together, we might be able to pull a couple more bucks out of the situation because people are not buying what they're selling anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, you can only watch Star Wars so many times.
That's right.
You know.
Well, we're being forced to work together. Again, it may not be a high-minded snapshot, but it's happening out of necessity.
In all of our years, have you seen something like that?
No.
I mean, yeah, you've seen co-productions of like, you know, Paramount and Fox, or, you know, as a production thing. But that was a business. This is so different.
Yeah.
I've never seen any. When I saw that, I was like, oh, there's something. Oh.
The sign of our times. But all of those creative forces together, by God, what can they create when they hybridize?
If they actually, if they were more conscious based, that gives a perfect example. So going back to Hollywood a little bit, in media, all those companies are run by giant corporations now. They're not run by filmmakers or artists like they were in the 80s, where all the cool ideas came out of.
Absolutely.
And that's what they're remaking now constantly, is the stuff that they took chances on. But they're also focused on shareholders. They're also focused on making money regardless.
Correct.
So their focus has to be about the bottom line, where if they shift out of that world into more of a consciousness base. I mean, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, you're insane. But to be fair, if 20 years ago you said, hey, everybody on the planet's going to have ability to do this thing called a podcast and spread their message around the world at pennies on the dollar, you would have said no, you're right. But most people would have said, you're insane. So what I'm saying here is, like, if they don't do these shifts, and it's not going to happen overnight, but they have to. If not, they will just cease to exist.
Absolutely, out of necessity.
Correct.
And I think when they make that shift, which I highly predict it's coming, because the people demand it, because, you know, so many people tell me, I just can't put on any television anymore. I'll just go to like your show or conscious shows like you, and they'll play it constantly for grounding, for survival. I mean, these are primal reasons people are tuning into broadcasts. I mean, it's not just for entertainment anymore. It's for stability and for grounding and connecting and learning. And so it's coming with a high price tag. So I think as people come together, even in Hollywood, creating conscious media, I think what that will attract are new artists, new philosophers, people from the outside world going, now I'm ready, just like myself, you know. I couldn't seem to break into any kind of media for the longest time. And as I was told, they aren't ready. And as soon as people became ready, you know, it's just like this perfect flow of meeting people like yourself. So I think as the shift happens, the people that are waiting to come online, so many people out there on your show are probably like, what is my purpose? When is my time? That's the irony to our transition right now. You may be here for tomorrow. You may be here for where the world's about to be. And it's getting a little eerie out there because things have been maybe decades in the waiting for your talents to come online.
I mean, look, I was in the business for 30 years. And if you would have told me 10 years ago, this thing called podcasting is what you're going to be doing. And I was wondering why in Hollywood, when I was in the room with the big movie stars and I did all that stuff, but it never really popped the way I wanted it to pop. You know, like to be, you know, household name. We all want to be Steven Spielberg. I mean, let's just put it that way. We all want to be Steven Spielberg. If you're a director, you wanted to be Steven Spielberg or James Cameron or Martin Scorsese. And it never popped that way. Made a living, but it didn't pop. And I was wondering, like, why did the universe put me here? What's the purpose of this? And when you were in the weeds, you could not see.
Right.
Only once I got out and looked back, I go, oh, I was being prepped this entire, decades. Exactly. Decades prepping for the moment that I'm sitting right here with you.
That's right.
Building what we've built here. This couldn't have happened without those decades of preparation. And if we opened this show 20 years ago, it wouldn't go. It just wouldn't have gone.
I love what you're saying, because it's about the you know, the creating and the purifying of the container, and everything's relevant. There are no accidents. So I see, you know, confusion out there in people that I meet, and I see they've held the line a very long time doing things they do not love. But if there are no accidents, And this is the exact moment you probably think, why does the universe hate me right now? But the way that the Akashic process, my guides explain, people coming into their highest mastery of talents through this Akashic knowledge body, the way they describe it to me is that your gifts and talents are like the Hope Diamond, and your life experiences, you could call it karma or strength training, is like the 7 miles of mud on top of your gift. Mm-hmm. And life is not about necessarily even the gift. It's about shoveling the mud off, not because life is horrible and confusing. You need to gain whatever strength you amassed through the decades of work that you did before you came here was necessary to hold the light and information that you channel in space for those who do. And, that's just something I can't say enough to people. Like, you are in strength training, I promise. It is for the holding of your diamond.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Now, with the economic systems that we have right now are based, especially in the West, on materialism, on buying constantly. Now the East is falling prey to that. India and China are starting, and that there's a few people over there. So they're falling for the trappings of the West,
for sure,
of the materialistic aspect of things. How can we move forward and create abundance while moving away from materialism and these fear-based economic systems?
Yeah, a lot of hard work and focus and centering, because that's been so long in the works, in the pipeline. And what it brings me to is just thinking about why materialism has snagged societies in the first place. Why do we go shop? Why there's an energetic drive there. I mean, you get that spark, you get that excitement, that pursuit. It's like the old hunter-gatherers, we're going to Best Buy to get the big screen.
Retail therapy. And we get that, that shot in our brain, that chemistry. Everything feels connected to what we have forgotten and what we're craving from all along. So I think it's been divisive to keep us, in this enthusiasm, but it's not working anymore. Right. Have you noticed? We're thinking maybe we just need to amass more money and get bigger things. And even that, watching people, if you look at TV and all the reality shows, watching that just feels so empty for a lot of us, I think. So this need for substance, this need for depth will not go away. I mean, you have a whole neighborhood of planets really just pounding on the door for this to happen in the human psyche. So I think we're going to be forced or willingly go or have an epiphany through our meditative places on what our purpose is, what our creation abilities are. It's all about what we have to create or what we have to give. These little lights are going to start to go on, and we're going to be so busy helping our neighbor mend a fence, or, taking care of people's kids if they need a little bit of extra help, or knitting, or, or walking, or immersing ourselves in nature. Again, I know this sounds to some maybe fantastical, like a utopian Earth, but we only have 2 choices. You collapse in the fear of loss, and you can't reach, what you've been what society has told you is the model all along. You can move in fear and loss and give up, or you can go within and start seeing why you're really here and the talents and the capacities that you possess. So there's only one way, and that's to turn and go within. I think it's really the best way. So as people do this, the corporations, big pharma, the governments, even families, I think that we're going to see our own essence of the eye of the storm. I think you're going to see things calm down or level out. And it's an opportunity for it to begin again and create anew. So that's why we're in the mad hustle right now, so to speak, to wake up. Now, moving to social media. Social media is one of these tools that is wonderful and horrific all at the same time.
All at the same time, yeah.
Where do you see, what part is social media going to play in our human evolution, in our shift in consciousness, moving on in the next year to decade?
If people are waking up to their potential or their talents, there's going to be way more, even than now, people wanting to create their own content.
Yeah.
Companies are going to recognize that. So I believe there's going to be way more platforms for social media than even now. So I think the multitude that will be birthing over the coming years of platforms, different kinds of social media landscapes. I think that's going to be a little intense. But on the good side of media, it put us all in connection where we would have never been.
Yeah, this
before.
Show obviously couldn't have gone unless we couldn't go through traditional media.
Yeah,
broadcast, cable, or you know.
I do sense, my guides tell me that there will be a level of censorship or conditioning to this before it grows. It looks like there might be kind of a compression or a repression to it because it's just untethered. And I think people are losing money by all these individual creators, the big corporations are. So
how are they going to do that? I mean, so let me ask you a question then. Obviously we broadcast over on YouTube, but we also broadcast our audio aspect on Apple and all these other platforms. Unless Google decides to do something about it, and let's say Hollywood's calling Google like, listen, man, these YouTubers, we can't.
Yeah, I'm sure those rooms do exist.
And those conversations have happened. But Google's like, screw you, we're making obscene amounts of money, and we are not going to mess with our business to do that. We're like someone like a Mr. Beast, and whether you love him or you hate him, it's the biggest YouTuber in the world. He reaches on an episode 350 million people.
Sure.
I mean, it's the Super Bowl, 3 Super Bowls every week. It's insane.
I absolutely agree. I think we're going to see and experience the shadow side of algorithm and AI, the suppression of the way content moves through its pipelines in the Ethernet. I think we're going to see a little bit of that, and that's okay. It may put us in a position to gather in person, which I think is a big part of our evolution, to come together and to meet and to speak in a very organic way without the internet. So I think that's going to happen a little bit. So you might have these creators or content creators that are like, where are my numbers? Where are my people? So you might see a little bit of a wobble time from that, especially when we get into 2025, just some odd things there. I don't think it'll affect everybody. I'm not really sure how that's all going to play out. I only bring it up now. My guides say take heart. Don't give up. It's something that passes and works through the pipeline, just like everything else.
So it's just an obstacle that we will get through.
We will get through.
And these creators, because the power, the great thing is that everybody has a voice. Yes. The bad thing is everybody has a voice. So it's like this. It's too much, but yet it's enough. And if that makes sense.
Can you imagine a world where we get to the point where we care about what we upload into the Akashic field? If our greatest intentionality throughout the day is our high-mindedness or our lightheartedness, because we know through the advancement of our being that our contribution is so much bigger than even media could ever reach.
Oh, of course.
So we get to the point where that might be something that we take reverence and understanding to. So we'll see.
So you mentioned AI, and that's a very hot topic. So many people are terrified. We've all seen the movies, Terminator, Skynet, all this kind of, The Matrix, all this kind of stuff. Where do you see AI in its place with our spiritual evolution and humanity's future in general?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, anybody would argue, it has its benefits and then it has its drawbacks. I think it has to move through to a place of imbalance to get people's attention, just like food did. It reminds me of the movement of food, where food was just, we didn't know where the food was coming, or back in the 50s when, bread was being fortified and we're like, it's fine, just eat it. I think right now it's helping everything awaken and arrive artistically and widespread. And you don't have to work so hard to just manage a search engine, or to choose your next film. So it's kind of like a breath of fresh air going, we finally get the assistance that we needed. But just like with anything else, I think it's going to go through back and forth with some iterations or phases of people of really taking away jobs, obviously, or taking away some of the organic rights to creators, may it be music or arts or science. It is. So again, don't panic, because the power is not in that. The power is in consciousness. And I know a lot of spiritual leaders right now are getting very, very upset that, this is going to encroach on the consciousness of man. It's going to monopolize what we're capable of as, ascending through our evolution. It will not, it cannot. It cannot. So nothing is more important than the computer of your mind and the genesis and the light creation of your heart. Nothing, not even AI. So if you stay in your truth and you remember who you are and what you're here to do, you will just blow past any kind of issues that the societal world or the corporate world or anything around you can throw at you. So it's about focus and centering. So, good and bad and everything. But it's all about the middle path. Sure.
Now, we've also spoken about religious institutions. Now, as I've mentioned before on the show, that there were institutions before. I am a recovering Catholic, so I always pick on the Catholics. That the Vatican was this omnipresent, nothing, was the Rock of Gibraltar. It was just infallible. Well, that's changed a lot. And I've seen that with a lot of organized religions around the world, institutions, things like that. How is religion going to shift with this human consciousness? Because there's so many people looking at dogma and going, I'm not vibing with that anymore.
If we get back to the laws of nature and we truly look at what is the power of perception, every single unit of life is complete. It's not lacking anything. So, and that goes to the individual, the institution. So believe it or not, everything has the complete capacity to be everything and nothing and all in between, right? So again, the power's in the perceiver, first of all. And if you have trauma or pain, I definitely walked through that part in my life from a religious institution. It's on you. You get to choose now. You get to work through that and forgive and release and heal, or not. So on the largest scale of consciousness, we will shift our perspective and our perception in what is truth. Okay, so I don't think we're going to be hung up in dogma. I think we're going to blow right past it, honestly. Okay. So on the largest level of nature, we're going to shift our perspective. On a more localized, talking about the here and now and the third dimension of religion, just like anything else, it's a corporation, isn't it? It needs your patronage. It needs your numbers. It needs your money to continue to sustain life. And as people shift and require more and transparency, as we're seeing, or depth, you're going to see what used to be a walled-off institution relaxing a little bit. Things like, we take everybody, we love everybody, love wins, So I think that'll be an amazing transformation. I don't know that many will trust it, but nothing can sustain up against the pressures of Earth at this time. So that's my big message. I don't care what you are, who you are, any human creation is going to go through transmutation right now. Whether it be AI, science, the individual, the corporate, the church.
Education, all of it.
The sun's going to win at the end of the day. The cosmos will evolve one way or the other.
That is a beautiful message and a needed message to be put out there, that everything will have to change.
It has to, yeah.
And, as humans, we generally don't like change.
Power of perception.
Yes.
Yeah.
Generally, we don't we'd like everything kind of, predictable.
Yeah. Predictable.
Generally, because if not, the tiger eats us.
Alex, it can be predictable if you're really focusing on the periodicity of nature and the cycles or the algorithm of planets. It actually is pretty predictable. I think we just need to stop making the gods the media or the corporate or the monetary systems. I mean, if we really get back to ground zero, just like our ancestors, and live in this tribal way, weirdly things will be calm and predictable. And we don't need to attach or to avert. We can. It's just enough to be alive. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine?
One
other area I wanted to ask you about is healthcare and the food supplies.
Big shift, yeah.
And food supply. I spent some time in Europe recently, and the food is so different.
Yeah.
The food supply is so different. The healthcare system is so different. We had to get some prescription for something that my back hurt or something like that, and we needed to get a muscle relaxer, and we went to urgent care and all that kind of stuff, and it was like $15. No insurance. I said 50 euros? Like, no, 15. I'm like, 50? What's happening here? What is happening? Right. So where is the food supply and the healthcare system? going to shift because they're both broken, especially here in the West.
For sure, for sure. And again, you could look at this in different levels as it goes through its new iteration and change. I definitely predict a coup d'etat that's going to happen through medical insurance companies. Oh, and again, it's prompted by the people, you know.
We're done. We're tired.
It's not working.
I don't want a $45 or $200 Tylenol. No. It's insane.
And your doctors can't heal you. Where before you would go in, you would have some symptoms, and allopathic medicine would be able to give you a few things and send you on your way. Well, because we're up against the stressors of a radical environmental shift, our physical needs are different and uncharted. So that's why, doctors are like, we don't know. Go see a specialist. And the specialist is like, we don't know. So what's going to happen with that, as it already is? We're going to tune into alternative methods of healing.
Food.
And light and sound and electricity will be the medicine of the future. But so as this is going, and organic foods we can't tolerate the chemicals anymore. Again, our systems are at critical mass. And so we'll do anything to survive. Humans always have. So if we're craving or needing a whole new health system, or we're needing more holistic care, those big pharma people and corporations are going to get that hit, and you're going to find more healthcare covering holistic modalities, which will be a major shift.
Yeah. Well, chiropractic is one that's occasionally
you're going to have acupuncture and massage. I think it'll be one big healthcare system, one big one that's going to say, we now support some holistic modalities, and it will be just
it will be a shock.
It will be a shock, because if you chart the health system back even a couple hundred years ago, I mean, I think they really ran homeopathy off the scene. I think it was
they ran them out of town.
They literally ran them out of town. So I mean, this is a big, if you want to look at it as conspiratorial or just the periodicity of nature, it's really intense. But again, our biologies have to upgrade. So the people watching your show are the most powerful agents on earth, period. And the more that you steep in your beingness, the more that you meditate, the more that you go in, your light becomes supercharged. You are becoming a living radionic force and magnet. So these are the people that can affect through manifestation, through creation, through channeling the Akashic records, whatever you want to say about it. Those are the people that are going to be, this is the new earth, and this is how we do the protocols. So
the thing is, you can't patent a leaf.
No, you can't patent a leaf.
That's why they ran them out, because they're like, no, just take this leaf or take this pill or remedy that we've created based on nature.
Right. We're going to get back to nature.
And we'll heal you. But they're like, no, we'll take that leaf. We're just going to do a little something, and now we can patent it. And now we can make billions of zillions of dollars.
I just don't think money will be our God for much longer. And I think that's where, if you take it back to like Hahnemann, the godfather of homeopathy, one of his laws was the law of infinitesimals. And that means basically in English, less is more. Less is more.
Oh my gosh. As I've gotten older, I've so the term of minimalism.
Minimalism
is so much
powerful.
Oh, every time you move, you really want to be a minimalist. Every time you move to a new house, you're just like, why? I haven't looked at these forever. Why am I? These are heavy. What am I doing lugging this around?
Yes.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of in tune with the slower that you move and the less that you do in your life right now, it increases your vibratory rate and your frequency. So it's all kind of, it's these laws of nature that are coming onto the scene, and we're re-educating or remembering this is the real way to co-create with Earth. And as we do that, then the powers and the phenomenons, the superhuman states that we've read about will return to here and now. So we won't be broken and sick as we feel right now.
Yes, please. Thank you. And finally, is there any major event or major energy shift that's going to happen over the next decade that's going to be something as equivalent to solar flares, equivalent to an eclipse, equivalent to the pandemic, for humanity to move in their consciousness? And I'm not saying on this date but is there any sort of thing that's going to happen in the next 10 years?
I think everything is going to put us on steroids at this point. So, the climactic events that we actually need to tune into, which we're seeing people do already, are these eclipses. are these, seasonal junctures, the equinox, the solstice. I mean, these are those really empowering points as the years click by and the veil to earth becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. Those places are going to be points of creation. So I don't know that it's going to be any new thing that's going to hit earth. Our everyday lifestyle is going to be full of different energetics that, depending on who you are and the lifestyle that you're leading, will affect you differently. But we are returning back to nature and its course and its cycles. So, yeah, I mean, we need to hang on and pay attention. Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests.
Yeah, sure.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
My definition of living a fulfilled life, personally, is how I can serve. And what can I do through my actions, through my intentions, to lighten my heart to be a better receiver and container of light and information? How can I align personally so that I can give back more? That is, I think, going to be the creed of any open-hearted person on the planet as we go forward.
Now, if you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Bonnie, what advice would you give her?
If I had a chance to go back and speak to little Bonnie, I would tell her, do not be so scared of the dark. Don't be so scared of what you don't understand yet, because everything that's happening is for your highest good. Trust your life. Trust your life. It all matters.
How do you define God or source?
I know it's the cheesy answer, Alex, but it's just love. It really is. Unconditional, expansive, never-ending.
What is love?
What is love? Unity, presence, truth, the non-committing to the floppy disk, but basking in the Bluetooth rays of all that ever could be. I think it's a life without limits. It's a consciousness in full-blown trust of what is, and taking into your heart everything, whether it throws a shadow or a pain or a contrast or a confusion, you let everything into your heart without judgment. So I think at the end of the day, what is love? Acceptance and non-judgment of everything.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Experience. Yeah.
Very nice. And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
They can visit me at my website, psychicbonnie.com, or my retreat center, The Legend of Greater Things.
Very cool. And do you have any parting messages for the audience?
Non-attachment, non-aversion. Trust your life. Every single thing you're encountering is perfect for you in the here and now. So it's your journey to find out why and to go within.
Bonnie, it has been such a pleasure and honor
likewise.
having you on the show again.
Back.
It was such a great conversation, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
I think we covered every facet of the modern world. I don't think we left anything out. Maybe pets, but next time.
That's the next time. Appreciate you, my dear. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.